This agency needs to change. If not now, when? The next assassination attempt in 30 days? Because we all should expect another attempt to happen before November. Yesterday, there was a hearing at the joint Senate and House looking into the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. It's only been 18 days. And in most of the mainstream media outlets, they've pretty much forgotten it. I promised you on Monday that we will not forget it. We are still shook by the fact that if it weren't for a quarter-inch turn of the head, Donald Trump would be dead in a pool of blood right now. I don't know why other people seem to be okay with that. The underlying message that's conveyed by the sort of noblesse oblige sort of approach to this story, the underlying message is, well, it was Trump. So, no big deal, right? It's almost like Jack Black's partner on Tenacious D, who believe, by the way, his name is literally Jack Black's partner on Tenacious D. When he said out loud what everybody else was thinking in the left-wing media and in the pop culture, which is, better aim next time. Sorry if that hurts anybody's feelings out there, but as long as there's lack of interest in pursuing the truth behind what happened on July 13th, as long as there's a lack of interest to hold those accountable who at the very best made one of the most drastic blunders in Secret Service history, until they take that seriously, we can only assume that you don't care that Donald Trump, the former president of the United States and the nominee for the Republican nominee for president this time around, almost got his head exploded in front of the entire world. You just don't seem to care about that. Mainstream elite media, we do care. It's a critically important story. And yesterday at that hearing, a whole lot was revealed, including this email that first was surfaced by Susan Crabtree, political reporter at Real Clear Politics. She's been covering the Secret Service for years now. She is the perfectly placed journalist to cover this. And I want you to see what this Secret Service agent said. Again, dated this Monday. And this was one of those, send to all kind of emails. He meant to send this to all. In fact, Susan Crabtree, I just interviewed her this morning on my radio show in Washington, D.C., and apparently this agent said that a bunch of his colleagues, emailed him back and said, hey, dude, you sent this to everybody. You know how you do that sometimes? You do a reply all, and someone say, hey, did you mean to reply all? And this agent said, yeah, I know I did. I meant to do that. Everybody needs to understand this. So let's read it together. Thank you for the backing and support. I'm not stopping until 5 high-level supervisors, one down, are either fired or removed from their current positions. This agency needs to change. If not now, when? The next assassination attempt in 30 days? Because we all should expect another attempt to happen before November. We've exposed our inability to protect our leaders due to our leadership. The technicians who worked on 7/13/24 in Butler, Pennsylvania did their job with their hands tied. Secret Service supervisors knew better, and the foot soldiers working made the best of a bad situation that resulted in a civilian death and a near miss of the protectee and our technician shooting and killing the suspect. I know many look at the CS team as guys who sit on the roof. CS is counter sniper, by the way, and don't do much. But our responsibility, our mission is not about protecting an empty White House located at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's about preventing and stopping another JFK-style assassination in whatever city they may be. Sadly, we have fallen short for years. We just got lucky and looked good doing it. I have conveyed these thoughts to not only supervisors, to include the current captain within CS, but those responsible for training us, SOTS CS, only to be brushed off as if those were with less experience somehow knew more than me. The team I was once proud to be a part of is something I have to now somehow hide as I move into my next career. Who wants to hire a U.S. Secret Service counter sniper guy who failed? That's the public perception I'm now faced with. The USSCS team is a stain I will never be able to cleanse. Some of us take our job and responsibility seriously, deadly serious. I may be overzealous, but after 7 years in the Marine Corps as an NCO and 20 plus years on the USSS counter sniper team, failure is not an option. And on July 13th, 24, we failed, not because of commitment or sense of dedication, but because our supervisors, leadership, knew better and thought our concerns were less than important. The motto of the USSS, CYA. And every supervisor is doing it right now. And if you didn't know, CYA means cover your. And sadly, that's kind of the common operating procedure in all of the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. Every single federal agency, especially those in the executive branch, they all operate on a CYA basis. But we always thought certain agencies were different, certain institutions were different, and the Secret Service was one of them, but not anymore. You'll remember when James Comey was caught red-handed setting up Donald Trump, leaking information through a friend of his, classified information to the New York Times to make Trump look bad. It led to his firing. And then when James Comey went on a big publicity tour, and I remember vividly, he was being interviewed by Brett Baier of Fox News Channel. And of course, James Comey's like, I have grave concerns here. You know, our president, there's evidence that is the whole Russian collusion hoax thing. But I don't want to get into that. I want to get into something that James Comey said at the time that has always resonated with me. When asked about how he dealt with President Trump and how he represented the FBI during the first months of the Trump administration that led to his firing, James Comey said, I realized at the beginning with President Trump that my sole job was to protect the institution of the FBI. And that sounds really noble. It sounds like he's a really great cop and he's pristine because, well, that's what he wants you to think. That's what the media and the elites in the establishment of Washington, D.C. want you to think. Yes, that's right. These institutions must be protected. No. What you're seeing right now with the Secret Service and the FBI in the aftermath of this assassination attempt is exactly that. CYA, protect the institution. Well, guys, they don't get sworn into office in their very cushy federal job that pays them very good salaries with very good benefits. And as we've learned, protection from being fired, no matter how inept or corrupt you might be. They don't get all of those benefits by swearing in on a Bible saying, I swear to protect and defend the institution from all enemies, foreign and abroad. No, you're not supposed to protect the institution. You're supposed to protect the Constitution. And the Constitution says that the head of the executive branch is the president of the United States. And if the president orders you to do something, you follow what the president said. You don't ignore him to protect the institution. Guess what? If the president of the United States wants to dismantle the institution, he's allowed to do that because he answers to us, we, the people, through the elections. James Comey doesn't answer to us. Does James Comey answer to you? Does the director of the Secret Service answer to you? No. That's why we have a constitutional republic. That's why these people answer to the president and answer to the legislative branch responsible for oversight. But this is this morass that seeps into Washington, D.C. at every institution, whether it's the Agriculture Department or the EPA or the IRS, and now, sadly, the FBI and the Secret Service. We have to protect the institution. I'm sorry, guys. I love the FBI, or I used to. I love the Secret Service, or at least I used to. I love these institutions, but they're still not bigger than the Constitution. They're not bigger than we, the people, the first three words in the Constitution. If you really want to protect the institution, don't act like this. Don't act like you're bigger than the Constitution. Don't act like you can defy the will of the people. If we elect a president who says they're going to dismantle the Department of Education and you work in the Department of Education and that president is elected, step aside because he's doing what we wanted him to do. Your institution is not more important. But this is the mindset in Washington, D.C. And that mindset now looks as though, or the the mindset now manifests in such a way during these hearings that we're seeing and during this investigation. The mindset of protect the institution, CYA at all costs, looks like they're trying to cover something up, covering something up much more than just incompetence or bad decisions. Because when you're covering something up, when you're obfuscating, when you're deflecting, when you won't answer questions like we saw in the hearing yesterday, you may be doing it because you're trying to protect your buddies or protect your budget. But if we don't know exactly what you're protecting, we think you're protecting something much more nefarious than that. That's why transparency and oversight is so important. Now, Marsha Blackburn, the senator from Tennessee, she actually read into the record that exact email that I just read to you, and then asked the acting director, Mr. Rowe, exactly about this mindset, about this culture that the Secret Service is now all about CYA. Watch the exchange.
Thank you, Senator. So I'm hurt by that email, but not in the way you think I'm saying it. I'm hurt because my people are hurting right now. We need them.
Then why did somebody delete the email?
I'll get back to you on that, Senator.
The agency deleted the email.
But may I address your question? And,
yes,
and
please.
I will get back to you
Please.
as to whether
Yes.
the email was deleted or not. My agency is hurting. Emotions are raw. I actually want to hear more from that UD officer, that technician. In his email, he referenced that he had spent time serving our nation as a United States Marine, that he is a 20-year professional of the Secret Service. I am committed to being a change agent, meaning I am committed to reviewing some of these things. I looked at the points in his email very quickly. I saw it as I was on my way over here this morning.
Yeah.
I want to have further conversations, not only with him, but also the counter
If
sniper
I may
supervisors.
step back in, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you want to talk with him. What about other whistleblowers? What about this culture? Are you going to allow these whistleblowers to speak out? Because it is troublesome if somebody went into the server and deleted that email. I would hope you will get to the bottom of that and be able to provide some answers. Because this is, as you have heard from both sides, this is a situation that cannot be allowed to happen again.
Yep.
He's hurt by that email. He's hurt. He's really hurt because his agents are hurting. The technician they're talking, they use words technician. The man's a sniper. His job is to kill people. His job is to put a bullet in a person's brain if they are a threat to the protectee, in this case, the president or the nominee or former president. I assure you, this isn't about hurt feelings, pal. I know that guy, take a look at him. He's got the haircut. He looks real squared away. Looks like a real, menschy kind of red-blooded American brute. But I don't care. I don't care what he looks like. He spent years on Capitol Hill working for Vermont Senator Pat Leahy, one of the most liberal and partisan, like ruthlessly partisan Democrats on Capitol Hill. After that, he worked as an advisor in the Obama administration. And now he's the deputy director, or acting director, I should say, of the Secret Service. Maybe if he really wants to be the change agent he says he should be, change should start with him. Maybe these positions in charge of something as vital and critical to the Secret Service shouldn't be political appointees who are beholden to one party or the other, especially someone who is so raw, ideological, and partisan as Pat Leahy and Barack Obama. Maybe that's part of the reform that we need. But it just doesn't occur to him because he's too busy with all the feelings. To coin a phrase from our friend Ben Shapiro, that bullet that whizzed by President Trump's skull and took a chunk out of his ear, that bullet doesn't care about your feelings. Fix the problem. 18 days later, and this guy still doesn't have any answers. Meanwhile, a former Secret Service agent was on Fox and Friends earlier, and he expressed similar outrage and analysis. Let's take a look at that.
Bring in former Secret Service agent Richard Staropoli. He joins us right now. Richard, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, the acting boss yesterday, he seemed quite frustrated. He said that he was baffled and senators were yelling at him and he was yelling back.
Yeah, he was baffled, all right. If nothing else, he certainly proved that he can read a statement that was prepared for him. But, you know, the public, the ranking file, the entire world was watching that testimony, and they expect a Secret Service director to answer questions directly and bluntly and pointedly, not to lose their composure, and certainly not to get argumentative with congressmen and senators who are approving your budget. That's part of the problem.
Yeah. As CB just mentioned, Real Clear Politics has gotten a copy of a memo that's circulating with a lot of Secret Service people. It sounds like it's from a current counter sniper inside the organization. And they say there's going to, they predict there's going to be another assassination attempt, given the fact that now everybody knows that there are lapses in security. They say it could happen before September. I know you have seen that particular memo. You think you know who it's from.
Yep.
Essentially, what they're calling for is they got a clean house at the top of the Secret Service.
Well, and that's exactly right. I've read that memo, or at least the memo that was published, throughout the press yesterday. And they're absolutely right. The Secret Service needs a house cleaning, right? The director of the Secret Service did not put on anywhere near the performance that she should have 2 weeks ago. And she passed the baton to these folks, to include the acting director and the bench that's sitting behind them. These are all legacy leaders. They all have to go. They're the ones that are more culpable and responsible for setting up the tone and the attitudes which led to what happened operationally 3 weeks ago. Not only do they need to get rid of the folks that were on the ground that were directly responsible for what happened here 3 weeks ago, but the leadership has to go as well.
Right now, there's so much finger pointing going on as well, not only inside the Secret Service, but also the Secret Service, the local cops, the state cops. It's just a mess.
Yeah, there's a lot of finger pointing, but you know what's interesting is that no names are named. You know, who is responsible for this? Well, this department. No. Who? There had to be a person who made the decision, leave that building open. Yeah, we're still looking into that. That's the only question at this point. They know. Of course they know. Listen, like I said on Monday, it just struck me that we, our entire team here at Town Hall, still reeling from this near disaster on July 13th. And the fact that the people in other media outlets have sort of moved on to the new flashy story of Kamala Harris and whether she's having a brat summer or not seems to be, at the very least, journalistic malpractice, if not intentional ignorance and ignoring of an incredibly serious topic. The near assassination of it. Talk about election meddling. Talk about election interference. Talk about democracy dies in darkness. An assassin's bullet doesn't get more permanent than killing the democratic process. And one is suspect of journalists, reporters, analysts, media outlets, streamers like we are here, not spending the kind of time that we're spending on it. And I want to spend time. I promised you we would. We've got a lot to get to today. But let's get to some of the better questions and answers from yesterday's hearing. I'm going to let it play as much as I can so that you can be informed. And when compelled, I'll comment, but I'll do my best, I promise, because there's so much to get to. We start with Josh Hawley from Missouri.
American is dead, that other Americans were critically wounded. Isn't that enough mission failure for you to say that the person who decided that building should not be in the security perimeter probably ought to be stepped down?
Senator, I think you're using the word decided, and I think we need to allow the investigation play out to include.
Who did make the decision then? If it wasn't the lead site agent, who made the decision not to put that in the security perimeter?
Senator, you're zeroing in on one particular agent. I want to find out exactly what was the entire decision process. So I think I want to be neutral and make sure that we get to the bottom of it and interview everybody in order to determine if there was more than one person who perhaps exercised bad judgment.
Well, sure. My question is, why don't you relieve everybody of duty who made bad judgment? So, yeah, you're right. I am zeroing in on somebody. I'm trying to find somebody who's accountable here.
And
you're telling me that the person who made the decision not to include this in the perimeter has not been relieved of duty. What about the person who's in charge of the interoperability of radio frequencies between local law enforcement and Secret Service? Has that person been relieved of duty?
No, Senator, because interoperability is a challenge, is a greater challenge than just one person. On that day, we had a counterpart system It failed
As the person
spectacularly.
who made the decision to send Donald Trump onto stage, knowing that you had a security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir, they haven't.
As the
because-
person who decided not to pull the former president off of stage when you knew that, in your words, the locals were working a serious security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir. Again, I refer you back to my original answer that we are investigating this through a mission assurance. And as opposed to zeroing in on one,
What more do
or
you need
two
to
individuals,
investigate
we want
to
find out
know
exactly what the
more do you
decision-making
need to
process was.
investigate to know that there were critical enough failures that some individuals ought to be held accountable? I mean, what more do you need to know?
What I need to know is exactly what happened, and I need my investigators to do their job.
You see what's happening here, but I do want to jump in and just remind you, it's been 18 days. Well, we need to know what happened here. We need to interview people. What the hell have you been doing for 18 days? In any other environment, this person's fired. I mean, they're all fired. Okay, you've got 10 days, and then I want all the answers to what happened here. 18 days later, yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out, man. You know, something tells me this guy's in a hot dog suit as well. We're trying to figure out who did this. All right, I'll get back, but it's just, I know that you're as frustrated as I am, and I just want to remind you, every time he says, yeah, well, we're trying to get to the bottom of it, 18 days later. And this is literally his one job.
And I
A lot
cannot,
of people didn't do their
cannot
jobs.
put my thumb on the scale. Otherwise,
What do you mean put your thumb on
the
the scale?
objective, you're asking me, Senator, to completely make a rush to judgment about somebody failing. I acknowledge this was a failure of the
Is it
Secret
not
Service.
prima facie that somebody has failed? A former president was shot.
Sir, this could have been our Texas school book depository. I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days,
Then
just like you
fire
have.
somebody
And
to
I will
hold them
tell you,
accountable.
Senator, that I will not rush to judgment, that people will be held accountable, and I will do so with integrity and not rush to judgment and put people
I can't believe
unfairly
that you are
persecuted.
unfairly persecuted.
Unfairly,
We've got people
sir,
who are
we
dead.
have to be able to have a proper investigation into this, Senator.
You said earlier that you've got to make sure that your protocols are followed, and unless there's a protocol violation, people wouldn't be disciplined. I would just say to you, I don't really care that much about your protocols. I think if your protocols don't provide for the fact that when a former president is shot, when an American is killed, when other rally goers, innocent people who just showed up on the day, when they are shot at and critically wounded, if that isn't a protocol violation prima facie, you should revise your protocols.
Senator, I think this is where you and I agree. This was a failure, and we will get to the bottom of it.
Well, I hope you're going to do something about it. Let me ask you something else. The Real Clear Politics reports this morning that you were directly involved in denying additional security resources and personnel, including counter snipers, not just to this event, but over the last 2 years that President Trump's team repeatedly asked for these additional resources, and you personally were involved in denying them. Is that true?
Senator, as I stated earlier, that is not true.
So you never denied any resources to former President Trump's team?
No, not me. No, sir.
And
Not
you weren't
personally.
involved in any of that? You
No,
were never
sir, I
involved
was
in the
not.
decision making?
No, sir, I was not.
Let me ask you just one or two other things here quickly. Well, whistleblowers tell me that, in fact, law enforcement were stationed to be on that roof and that law enforcement abandoned their post because it was too hot. Is that accurate?
Senator, I have heard that as well. Again, they posted up inside. And I think moving forward, as I said earlier, we're going to ensure that state and local counter snipers are on roofs.
But do you know if someone was supposed to be on the roof? Do you know if someone was in fact? That's what the whistleblowers tells me. That may or may not be accurate. Do you know that to be the fact? Was somebody posted to the roof, local law enforcement or whomever?
I do not know that to be a fact.
Well,
All right, I want to move on to Senator Mike Lee, but I wanted to make sure you got that answer. 18 days later, he doesn't know whether local law enforcement had been assigned to that roof or not. And the fact that he gets uppity and starts, yeah, I'm sorry, who works for who here? Who is accountable to who here? Who has oversight and who is supposed to be overseen? The arrogance of him pushing back, he's trying to have his his big television viral moment. How dare you, sir? At long last, have you no shame? How dare you ask me? This could have been our Texas book depository. We're well aware of that, pal. You're the one who seems to be acting like this is just, yeah, listen, mistakes were made. We'll figure it out. Trust us. It's not how this works. Let me tell you something. That entire attitude that you just saw is why we are where we are. That entire attitude that he just displayed for the entire world to see is exactly why July 13th happened. Mike Lee, senator from Utah, had quite a bit to say.
Why was President Trump allowed to take the stage at 6:02 p.m., exactly 17 minutes after multiple suspicious person reports were provided, complete with photos and information suggesting that the assailant had a rangefinder, something that ordinary people don't use in this kind of circumstance?
Senator, again, it was suspicion, not weapon, or there was never communication of that there was an individual with a gun or threat or other bad intentions.
Yeah, you know what? And that reminds me that the exchange you just saw, I'm not going to leap to a hasty conclusion. We're going to do this right. I'm going to keep my integrity. We don't want to jump to any conclusions. That's the mentality that the agents on the ground had when they said, all right, so this guy looks suspicious and he sort of snuck in and he's got a rangefinder and he keeps using it to look at where the president's going to be standing. But let's not leap to conclusions. Let's not keep eyes on him and make sure he doesn't slip away. Let's not treat it as a threat. That's the same mentality, right? Oh, I don't know. I mean, sure, somebody may have made a mistake here or there. Clearly, I mean, this was a bad day for us, but let's not leap to conclusion as to who might be guilty. Let's let this drag out. Let's let the evidence trail go cold. Let's let people's memories get all muddy. Let's spend the next 18 days covering our ass and maybe making sure that we all have our stories straight. You see, the reason why you investigate something immediately is to make sure that none of the conspirators, none of the people who are all trying to protect each other get together and agree on a story, agree on a lie, right? That's why the investigation needs to happen immediately. And at this point, I fear it's too late. But yeah, let's not leap to conclusion about who's responsible with the Secret Service. And at the same time, we're not going to leap to conclusion about some dirtbag guy who snuck in outside the perimeter with a rangefinder and is now using it to look at where the president's going to be standing. Hey, that could be anything, man. He might be a photographer. Let's not leap to conclusions. Only a bullet will change your mind.
How many suspicious person reports did you receive that day?
I'll get back to you on the exact number, but there were other individuals that came to the attention of law enforcement that day.
Would President Biden ever be allowed on stage under similar circumstances with an unresolved set of multiple suspicious person reports provided, including indicating that there was a rangefinder involved?
Senator, I can tell you that a suspicious person on the outer perimeter with local law enforcement attempting to locate would happen, but I would need more information as far as whether or not we would allow the president to go on or off. Again,
now that, I'm sorry, guys, is a 100% answer. That is prime. You can smell it from the barnyard a mile away. Think about what he did. The question was very simple. Under the exact same circumstances, would President Biden been allowed on the stage the way President Trump was allowed on the stage? And this guy weasels away. Well, I'd need more information. No, you literally need no more information. The exact same scenario with the exact same suspicious character with a rangefinder and the way the perimeter was drawn with this building right there, 130 yards away. Everything is exactly the same. You don't need any more information. The only difference is instead of Donald Trump, it's Joe Biden. Would you have let him on the stage? What a lying, cover your ass weasel. Absolute weasel. And this is supposed to make the American people not only feel confident and secure with the Secret Service's ability to protect every person, and that includes Democrats, by the way. Unlike, sadly, so many people on the left, I don't want Kamala Harris to be assassinated. I don't want Joe Biden to be assassinated. This is supposed to make us feel confident in their ability to do their job, and it's supposed to make us feel confident that they're not covering anything up. Well, if that's what they're attempting to do, they have failed. Again, another failure.
For us, it comes down to weapon, a potential threat. Is the individual carrying an IED? Is there a weapon? Is there some other factor that now ramps up our attention to
Understood.
let's
Understood.
hold off on this?
If there were 8 shell casings found next to the assailant's body, but he was neutralized after the first shot, where do those other shots come from? Where do the other shots go?
As far as the assailant's shooting?
Yes. So did the assailant get out 8 shots, or were those shell casings left from the day before? Where did they come from?
The shooter, Senator, we believe fired 8 rounds. We had the shooting reconstruction team go out there for a period of days and collect all that. So we have bullet holes, bullet fragmentation, all taken back, and we're still putting together the trajectory and ballistic analysis, although we do have fragments of the bullets, and bullets have been collected in the distance from the shooter's weapon.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. And listen, the Mike Lee video is fantastic, and I believe we have it all posted at Town Hall. I do want you to see the whole thing. It's great stuff. It really is. And honestly, we could do an hour on this. We should do an hour on this. Where's ABC News doing an hour on this? Where's CBS News? Think about their budgets. Think about their resources. Think about how many people they have in Washington, D.C. covering the federal government. And have you seen anything coming from them? Really? I mean, I guess ABC did one thing up in Butler with the local law enforcement, but Secret Service, it takes Real Clear Politics and Town Hall and podcasters and talk radio hosts and streamers to actually draw attention to this. But you heard the deputy FBI director there. This is the guy who is the number 2 to Christopher Wray, talking about bullets and bullet fragments, which brings us to our, I mean, we have a lot of favorite senators, but I think John Kennedy might be our very, very favorite. And he remembers vividly last week, Director Christopher Wray of the FBI under the House Judicial Committee, when Jim Jordan, the chairman there, asked about whether it was a bullet that hit Donald Trump's ear. And Christopher Wray says, yeah, there's still some question about that, whether it was a bullet or shrapnel or what have you. You remember that. It fed into the fever swamp of Keith Olbermann and Joy Reid and all these other lunatics. It's saying, see, the FBI isn't even sure if it was a bullet. The whole thing's a fake. It's a fraud, right? Well, John Kennedy wanted to Jen Psaki circle back on that yesterday, and this is an important exchange. Remember, last week, the director of the FBI said that there's some question as to whether Donald Trump was hit by a bullet or shrapnel. Now watch this.
Is there any doubt in your mind or in the collective mind of the FBI that President Trump was shot in the ear by a bullet fired by the assassin crooks?
Senator, there is absolutely no doubt in the FBI's mind
It
whether former President Trump was hit with a bullet and wounded in the ear. No doubt, there never has been.
Okay.
I've been part of this investigation since the very beginning, and that has never been raised.
You're sure
Yes.
it wasn't a space laser?
No.
It wasn't a murder hornet?
Absolutely not.
It wasn't Sasquatch?
No, Senator.
It was a bullet
It was a bullet, Senator. 100%.
fired by crooks
Yes, sir.
that hit President Trump in the ear and almost killed him.
100%, Senator.
Okay, glad we cleared that up.
Yeah, but he did more than clear it up, didn't he? He also pointed out that you heard him say it, there has never been a question about this. The FBI has never had any doubt in their investigation as to what hit Donald Trump in the ear a fraction of an inch from his skull on July 13th. It was the bullet from the assassin's gun. And yet Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, under oath last week, said, yeah, there's some doubt about that. There's some question. So Christopher Wray either knowingly lied under oath again, thus feeding the fever swamp of conspiracies on the left about Donald Trump just pretending and making it all up. And really dipping his fingers into a Heinz ketchup packet and then rubbing it on his face. Or Christopher Wray is completely uninformed and not aware of the investigation into the assassination of Donald Trump, but then speculated under oath in front of a House committee last week. Either way, maybe Christopher Wray should be finding a new job. You think?